ahead and take. Oh, we got the recording. Thank you, Colby. Yes, we needed that done. Now that that's finished, I'm going to say that again. We're going to get started at 6:40. We'll open the meeting and I'll call roll. Ren Blight. I see you. Ren, can you say, I didn't hear you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can now. Thank you. Brad is here. Tess Taylor.
Here.
Okay. Mark Stevenson.
Here.
Here. Bob Scabelli. I know I saw you, Bob. Go ahead and unmute if you can hear us.
I'm here. Thank you.
Here. Okay, thank you. Brandon Whalen
Here.
is here. Ron Babini
Here.
is here, and Lee Jameson, which I know you're here because we just spoke, Lee Jameson. And see if you can promote yourself to panelist. I'll try you one more time.
Fred, since he's on the phone, give him the phone command, whatever that is. I believe.
Oh, here we go. He got it. He got it. He got it. He got it. Okay, you're with us, Lee. Thank you. Lee, are you on the phone or are you on the Zoom? I think he's on Zoom, but anyway, he's here. Okay.
Yeah, I'm on Zoom.
You're on Zoom. Okay. We got that now. Motion number 3, item 3. We're going to review the minutes. Is there any discussion on the minutes from June 13th, 2022?
Lee, can you mute yourself or whoever the feedback? Okay, there we go. I did have a question, Fred. When did we vote on the LA City Council file 220158, the Bonin Ramen Blumenfield? Did we not do that in June?
You're asking me? I can't remember that. I don't know, Tess. I'd have to look.
Yeah, we did.
Okay, so yeah, then that should appear on the minutes.
Okay.
Yeah,
We make a note
I
of
remember
that.
us doing both of those sort of back to back. That's all.
Okay. Okay. All right. I will add those to minutes.
Yeah, so that and the vote. Good, thank you.
Thanks, Tess. Anything else?
We love you, Fred.
Oh, yes, we love all of you. Now, since these need to be added, should we not vote on the minutes tonight and I'll add them and we vote when they're added? Or how do you want to do that?
I think we could vote on them as amended, or we could, once this missing information is put in, that they would be, I believe we could then approve them. So I would suggest that we do that. Brandon, does that sound right to you?
I was just looking at my notes to see if I had the vote because that is important.
Yes.
But I don't have the vote in my notes. But these meetings are recorded. I think moving forward to just approve it as amended, the intention is there, as long as it's posted with that information. So.
Okay. And that's what we'll do. So then motion A, approve GTLNC June 13th, 2022 Plum Committee minutes as amended. Do I have a first?
First.
Ren.
Ren, do I have a second?
Yes.
Tess. Okay, Ren Blight, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. Mark Stevenson.
Yes.
Yes. Brandon Whalen.
Yes.
Yes. Fred Iberia, yes. Bob Scabelli. And Bob is muted. If you could unmute.
Yes.
Okay, yes, thank you, Bob. Tess Taylor.
Yes.
Yes. Ron Babini.
Yes.
Yes, and last but not least, save the best for last, Lee Jameson. And go ahead and I'll see if I can unmute you. And Lee Jameson, how do you vote? Well, let's see. We don't hear anything. We don't see anything from Lee.
I was going to
Oh, here we go. There is
we
Lee.
go. I was going to affirmative on the motion.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Lee.
Mhm.
So we have 3, 6, 7, 8, 0, 0.
I didn't hear what?
Okay, and now moving on to public comment. Oops, I don't want to press my share screen button, press the participants button. And here we are, attendees. Do we have any public comment? Please raise your hand. Wow, no public comment today. I can't believe that. Must be the heat. Okay, well, let's go on to item number 5, committee member news and announcement. Anyone have committee member news announcements? Brandon Wayland, go ahead.
Sorry. This will be my last committee meeting. I wanted to let everyone know that I wanted to resign. The last 2 years have been interesting, to say the least. But Bob, thank you for the invitation when you were chair. I really appreciated, everyone's time and the opportunity that that has brought me this. Yeah, so I appreciate that. I hope that I brought value to the conversations and provided constructive counterpoints to difficult topics such as housing and homelessness, but I want to put my efforts elsewhere. I feel like I've been in the minority of many discussions and votes on this committee, but I no longer want to be in that position. But just as a reminder, my absence does not mean that my views are not shared by others in the community. And so I just wanted to go into another announcement is that the pandemic has been hard. It's still with us, but government protections are changing. Folks are going to be subject to rent hikes come August 1st. It's going to be difficult, and these are discussions that I would like to see, or I think that the neighbor council should be having. So there is a coalition with the county, the city, and other community partners called Stay Housed LA, and they're offering workshops to learn more about resources and tenant protections happening this week. You can visit their website at stayhousedla.org. And I'm going to send whoever does the newsletter to put that in the newsletter. But there's a workshop starting tomorrow at 10 a.m. So there's 2 tomorrow, the 12th, the 13th, and the 14th, 16th. So anyway, there's information on that. I just wanted to leave you all with that. I'll continue with the meeting, but this will be my last meeting. And it's actually 2 years exactly. So I feel like I've put in my time. So thank you.
I'd like to thank you particularly for the work you did on our community design for developers. We put that plan and that list together, things that we want to have developers look at. And I hope we will carry it forward and other people will step up and enhance that write-up. But I think you really got us started, Brandon. I want to thank you for that, and more generally for all of your service to the committee. I think you were in the minority on some votes, but you weren't. I think you helped keep us, focused on some of the issues in a good way. So thank you.
Well, thank
Brandon,
you.
this is Bob, and I'm sorry to hear that you're leaving the committee because I think you've made a very positive contribution to all the discussions. And I think being in the minority, and I've often vote for you more often than not, there's all the more reason why you should stay on, because I think you give us a balanced view, a different view, and you can change people's minds by staying. So I would ask you to reconsider. You can always come back if you want to go leave for 1 or 2 meetings and then come back. I would love to see you do that. So please reconsider. I think the committee will miss you terribly.
Thank you for that.
So Robert, you jumped the line, but I'll
Oh,
forgive
I'm
you.
sorry. Am I on? There's a, oh, I'm sorry.
There's a long line of people who want to say nice things to Brandon, including me. So Brandon, we don't always agree on things, but what I particularly like about you is that you are thoughtful, researched, and polite. There isn't demagoguery. And you and I enjoy debating things with you because you know, you don't resort to playground tactics like a lot of people do, even if we don't end up agreeing on things, but we do agree on a fair number of things, I think. So I am very appreciative of your work because I see that you come prepared, you've read materials, you've gone through things, you have thoughtful questions. And I hope that we're going to stay in touch and that you will at least remain involved tangentially, if not consider coming back in the future. I do, you know, enjoy seeing you around the neighborhood, and I take your ideas very seriously. So thank you very much, Brandon.
Thank you.
Yeah, Brandon Mark Stevenson here. Just thank you for the 2 years that you've been on this committee and pushing us and helping us improve, which I believe that we have, and enhanced what the committee does. You know, Brandon, the interesting thing is that, and this goes for all of us. I can't think of, you know, many votes where we've been unanimous. However, I appreciate the ability that you bring, so it brings tension. And what I mean by that is it's not a bad tension. That's where good can come out, is when we do have tension. So that way that we can work through that. And I believe that you have truly been a huge asset for the committee. And I do hope that while you at this moment are stepping away, I hope you will reconsider, as Bob had stated. And if not, maybe in a couple of meetings, come back and please don't stay away. We definitely need your input. This committee, but also community, are appreciative of everything that you do. So I just want to say thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else have anything to say? All right, well, I'll just say a couple things. I echo what everyone else just said. Brandon, I'll miss you as well. And you think you've been very, very helpful in giving us new ideas and direction and a really good perspective and just overall helpfulness. And so, yes, we will miss you quite a bit. And I do hope that if nothing else, you'll come to our meetings as an attendee and pretend like you're still on the committee, but not have all the responsibilities that go with that. So anyway, again, we're always here for you, and thank you for all your help. That having been said, let's move on to old business. And what I'd like to do, since we have a guest speaker on tonight, is move his item up to the first one. It was 6.5 oversized fence request for 9950 Toluca Lake Avenue. And I'm going to promote Chris Parker, who is our representative on that property, who will speak a little bit about it. We can answer ask some questions that he can answer and go from there. Okay, so with that, I will ask Chris to unmute. And thank you very much for joining our meeting, Chris.
Thank you, Fred. I really appreciate it. Hope everybody can hear me okay. The nods I appreciate. I know you can. My name is Chris Parker. I'm a land use consultant at Pacific Crest Consultants. We do entitlements such as fence cases, conditional use permits, coastal development permits in case you guys are ever in Pacific Palisades or Venice, and other entitlements. We also do permitting for a lot of our clients. I personally have done about a half dozen projects in the Toluca Lake area in the 19-ish years that I've been at Pacific Crest Consultants. And I know that a lot of our permit consultants have done a couple dozen more. We don't always have entitlements tied to our requests, but tonight we do. Fred, would it be okay? I did a four-page PowerPoint. Would it be okay to share?
That would be great. Absolutely.
It's saying that the host has disabled me from.
Oh, here, let me fix that for you.
Thank you. I believe we're good now.
Okay.
Okay. There we go. So this is a fence case for the home at 9950 Toluca Lake Drive. As you can see, both in the picture, which is relatively recent, and if anybody happened to go by the house last few weeks, it is already under construction, renovations to the house, a significant remodel. This is kind of a trailing request for a fence case. So what we're talking about is the proposal is a 6 foot tall painted wood picket fence with 6 foot tall, and it would be along the property line, excuse me, a little bit inside the property line. You can see the thicker lines here. 6 foot tall masonry pilasters with a brick veneer. So that's what these posts are. And 7 foot pedestrian gate, which would be right in this area, and a 6 foot wood picket sliding driveway gate, which would be in this area. This is the street elevation. So you can see again, wood picket fence, white, 6 foot tall, pilasters also 6 feet tall, sliding driveway gate. The pedestrian gate is 7 feet, mainly because of this architectural feature of it having the curved top instead of the flat top. But then the consistent on this side, still 6 feet tall, but it's going to be the combined masonry brick surfaced with the wood picket fence. And then, as I promised, just a few slides. The request is very in line with other requests in the Toluca Lake area. I did a survey, and what you're looking at is approved fence cases. These are cases that a zoning administrator in the last decade or so in the Toluca Lake area approved along with their address and what those heights were. Obviously, as we all know, me working in Toluca Lake and you all living there, there are a lot more overheight fences than even this. But I think it's important to we take precedent from what was approved, not necessarily what we see that has been built. So that is the presentation, and the request is for a combination of safety and security. But my client didn't want to build a complete solid wall that people couldn't see through. So there is still some interaction with pedestrian, with neighbors, but is making this request to have a little bit more security, a little bit more definition in his front yard. Happy to answer as many questions as people have.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. We have a question from Ron. Go ahead,
Yes,
Ron.
Chris. My question is, what is the space between each of these pickets that we can see through?
I believe it's either an inch or two in between. I think Tess wanted to.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Ron, could you please repeat the question? I didn't quite catch that. It was
I
very.
want to know what is the space between the pickets, so that how much space is there for what us as walker-bys, as I often do on Toluca Lake Avenue, to see through, where it isn't completely opaque.
Right. I believe that they're separated by about an inch each. It's definitely not solid. It's intentionally the picket look, the space between, so that there can be interaction.
Moreover, can I ask then, well then, how wide are the pickets themselves?
I don't know that I have. I'm just looking at my project team notes. I might have to get back to you on the width of the pickets. I assume they were standard size. I didn't know that they really came in different widths. Okay, it says, a 1 inch wide picket style picket style wood, 1 inch. So 1 inch, 1 inch, 1 inch, 1 inch.
So 1 inch of picket fence, wood, and then 1 inch of space between it and the next picket.
Correct.
So it's about 50% see-through.
About, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Ren, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sort of my general comment. As your kind of demonstrates, we're losing the battle of not having walls and fences throughout Toluca Lake. A lot of us old timers really go back to the time when we felt like Toluca Lake was a neighborhood community where people kind of walked around and the kids played on each other's lawns and all of that sort of thing. I think that's obviously being lost, and I think more importantly, all these walls and fences give the impression that our community is a dangerous place to live, where people are not safe unless they walk themselves in. And I think that's A, not true, and B, a sad commentary on our community, because I think I'd like to see us more neighborly and more involved with each other, and somehow a wall or a fence, even a picket fence that's that high, kind of nobody should come up and knock on the door to give you cookies at Christmas or something. Anyway, just comment from an old timer. I think we're losing the battle, but I'm going to vote no, just in general, because I don't. There's some strong reason. We've had a couple of cases like on Camarillo where there was a good reason for a wall or fence, but in this case, I don't think so. I'm sorry to see it.
Okay, Ren, thank you very much. Tess, you're next. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I agree with Ren, Chris, and you seem so lovely and delightful, and this is a very well put together presentation. But I feel similarly. I think it sends a message we don't want to send with Toluca Lake when the walls are obstructing everything. And I don't believe there's enough basis for safety, or that a 1 foot invariance would do the job if it were, particularly. And I look at this list of past height variances that you've provided, which I appreciate, but there's only been one in the last decade that I can see. And prior to that, it goes back to 2007. And this committee has approved one such height variance, fence variance, because they're at least the committee was persuaded that it was a true safety issue with a couple of other variables. But our last fence height variance matter was denied by the committee for the reasons that Ren expresses. So I do appreciate the thought that you've put into this. I'm going to vote no with the greatest respect, Chris.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. And I understand, and if there's any other, I certainly understand, I make these presentations, throughout Los Angeles and Brentwood, Holmby Hills, and, other areas, Pacific Palisades, where there's a combination of for safety, for privacy, for celebrity reasons. And I know, we've worked for some of the celebrities who live in Toluca Lake. We've also worked on a lot of properties next door to some of these celebrities. I actually personally thought that because I was excited to present this to this committee, because I thought the fact that it was the open picket fence style, that would be more receptive. I know that I have had clients in the past who wanted solid walls. They didn't want anybody to see them, didn't want anybody to be seen. So I was hoping that the picket fence style would persuade. Remember, I know there still is a vote coming, but I would just say that was, my client also thought that was more open and receptive.
Okay, thank you. We have Brandon Whalen, and we also have a member from the public as well. Go ahead, Brandon.
Oh, thank you. Chris, okay, so you just said that you thought the design would be more complementary or whatever to what the discussion has been so far. So can we talk about, so it's a 6, I'm looking at the plans. At the 6, it's 6 feet. And then, thank you. And then what about color? Does it say anything about color or what?
It's a white picket fence
White,
and then
okay.
brick veneer, so it's white and red.
So it's not like a solid concrete wall or something like.
Correct, it is
some
not.
of these walls, yeah. So, okay, I mean, I appreciate that. And then does the renderings or what have you, the door where the
Yeah.
little man there is that also the same kind of see-through path?
Yeah, it is. It's the same. It's the vertical 1x6 pickets in the gate. It's just the 7 feet because of the arched, also to kind of for people who are walking by so that they could see the differential, that's different. That's where that must be where the walk-in gate is.
Yeah, and so I guess, I've agreed with folks that I've previously spoke on other cases, but with the viewpoint to be a view shed or whatever, like, you can see through it, and it's just, it's a classic white picket fence. I don't know, it makes me sound inclined to vote yes. If anything, this may be a good model to anyway for the neighborhood. But I'm trying to see like what can the committee, like, if I can change their minds, but I don't know.
Well, Brandon, that is a convincing mitigating factor. I will certainly give you that. I do want to have a quick follow-up question, if I may.
Well,
And that-
my last point
Oh,
was
sorry,
just,
Brandon.
sorry, Tess, but it was just that, it's going through the normal process, but Ren, you said that like a lot of these walls and fences make it seem like that there's crime in the area. I think it just makes it beyond this application. Like, I think the notion is more of like it becomes a more exclusive neighborhood. And I don't really think of, when I see the walls, I don't think like, I'm not checking my shoulder. But I appreciate this application that you can see through it. So, and thanks for Ron for asking those questions. So, thank you.
My quick follow-up question before we get to the public is, Chris, there's a section here on the application, neighborhood contact sheet. Have the neighbors been contacted or spoken to or asked their opinion on this? Do you know?
Yes, I was actually talking to my client this morning about that, and he has talked to several neighbors, and so I gave him I said, well, if you want to actually turn their support into a physical letter, I would appreciate that. So I gave him some ideas. He has not heard from any neighbor that objects to it. I know that honestly, that sometimes these neighborhood council meetings are the first place where you find out that there's a nearby neighbor who objects. So we were kind of curious to see if it would happen. He hasn't talked to everybody, but the neighbors he's talked to so far have been perfectly satisfied. I mean, I don't want to say that they're like, woohoo, that's the best idea ever, but they have no objections. They support his putting up this fence. I think it looks good.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna go to the public now, and we have first one, Joanne Rivas. Go ahead, and you're allowed to talk.
Thank you. I want to completely support everything that Ren Blight said. He's spot on. For me, it's it's kind of like give the devil an inch. You take a yard kind of concept where, okay, today it's a innocuous picket fence, and then down the road it's walls and bricks, and and everyone's going to be out doing each other. And to me, okay, yeah, it's exclusive, but you know what? It loses the neighborhood feel. Toluca Lake is not Beverly Hills. Toluca Lake is Toluca Lake. And there's a sense of neighborhood in Toluca Lake that I would hate to see lost. You know, you can create privacy in other ways, you know? So I'm hoping the board will say no and not getting this kind of thing up and running. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Joanne. We have David Wheatley.
Thank you, David Wheatley. I've been on here before. Nice to see you all. Too bad you can't see me, but not that that's so great. I totally congratulate and support Ren on his point of view, and Tess as well. Picket fence is a misnomer. Picket fence is 3 or 4 feet high, like on the Andy Griffith Show. Picket fences, by my definition, do not go this high. Also, I think it does convey a sense of fear and paranoia that the community is dangerous and that people don't want to engage. And next will be tinted windows on the cars coming and going, remotes to open gates, go inside, where in the extreme, we'll find ourselves not knowing who our neighbors are. Could be blocks and blocks of so-called picket fences and walls and bulletproof glass on the windows of the cars. And I think we're going down the wrong path here, and that I urge you to deny this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gregory. Excuse me. Thank you, David. Now we're going to Jonathan Gregory. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Hi, thank you. Mr. Parker, I would recommend or ask you to do what some of the other, I'm interested in seeing fair, how do you say, every applicant gets treated fairly based on similar criteria. Obviously, every application has its own nuances. In this case, though, I would like to call to your attention that in the past, the board has considered conversations about the goal that the applicant or your client, the homeowner, was seeking to satisfy. So for example, in other fences, we heard that they lacked sufficient privacy, and that seemed to have an effect on the board. So I looked at your lot, and in the back of the lot, it was very hard for me to tell. There's a black line, and either there's a disassociated landlocked piece of land behind it, or is that an expansive backyard where the family or whoever's going to live there already has ample privacy? Well, so perhaps it's a security issue that they're seeking to satisfy, but I think you should tell the board what it is your client is really after, although it may be obvious to other people. It's not to me unless you say it. And the other point I would say is, what is it made out of? White picket fences are almost never made out of wood anymore. They're aluminum, they're vinyl, they're plastified wood or manufactured wood. Do you happen to know what this is made out of? Because it does affect the look and long-term durability of it. Thank you.
Would you
Okay.
like to answer the?
Yes, go ahead. That was the last comment. Chris, back to you.
Wood. I've been told by the landscape architect that they actually plan on putting in wood picket fences. So, and as far as what's, I mean, the motive really is combination of privacy and security. I don't have a celebrity client in this case. I don't have police reports, but I do have, you know, a family of affluents that would like to at least have a line, so that there's, you know, the same thing that most people want fences for. I don't know what the black thing is, but I mean, the lake is behind the house. I don't know what.
Maybe that's what I was saying. I was trying to understand it, and I've never been there. Thanks.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I just, so yeah, there's no ulterior motives, and I don't have like I said, I don't have a celebrity client in this case, but I do have, you know, actually pretty normal clients who are, but you know, and they were hoping to get the support of the neighborhood council because again, at least it's an open fence that people walking by or driving by will still be able to see through. But there will be the line. There will not be the temptation for people to just walk up to the front door for any reason. And then in this day and age, that is something that all of us, especially those of us who have kids, you know, sometimes worry about. So That is the request. I would point out, there was comments made, or how do we know this won't turn into a solid fence or a taller fence or anything like that? For those who aren't aware, when the zoning administrator issues the determination letter, if it turns out to be an approval, we have to record a covenant that says it will be exactly what was on display. So, and of course, there is still a ZA hearing to be held. So if this committee were to say, will we support it only if it's, picket fence or whatever conditions you guys want to put on it, then that could be conditions that are put on an approval letter that we then have to record a covenant. And not only does our client have to agree to it, but future owners have to abide by that covenant. So I would just point that out.
Chris, thanks for pointing that out. One thought that I had actually is that, the alternative perhaps would be a 3-foot fence. You plant ficus trees behind it and it grows 20 feet tall. And so you still have the privacy that no one could stop you doing. So in that case, if we were to support this 6 feet with a covenant saying that you won't plant any trees behind it to go 20 feet tall, is that something that is doable?
Normally I would say, well, let me talk to my client, but if that's absolutely. He has no intention of planting ficus back there or any kind of hedge. And so I think that he would be very comfortable signing a covenant that says that.
Right, because that's what I would be afraid of. If this was denied, then that would be what the person does, and it's still going to be.
Yeah.
Anyway, those are my comments with that. Anyone else have anything to say? Okay, and well, I guess we should go to a vote, huh? Let's do that. I don't see anyone else. All right, so let's propose a motion to support an oversized fence request at 9950 Toluca Lake Avenue. Do I have a first?
I first.
Okay, who said that?
Ron.
That was Ron. Okay, Ron first. And do I have a second?
Bob,
Bob and Tess. It was like a tie. So I'm just gonna go for
ladies
Give it to
first.
Bob. Give it to
Ladies
Bob.
first, ladies first.
Tess, ladies first. Okay. Okay. Excuse me. Getting over a little cold. No, I don't have COVID, just a little cold. Okay. So once again, this is a motion to support the oversized fence request located at 9950 Toluca Lake Avenue. And Ren, how do you vote?
As I said, I vote no. By the way, it's 42 inches, I believe, is what you can build. So, that's what I would encourage, that they consider at least making it shorter. Anyway, I vote no on the motion as is.
Okay, Mark? Oh, Mark, Stephen?
Yeah, no, I'm here. I'm still weighing all of this.
Let me come back to you.
Yeah, but I probably have a comment for Chris as I weigh this out. Just come back to me.
That's fine. Okay, Brandon?
I'm a no because it's too tall.
Brandon's a no. Okay, Bob?
I'm a yes,
Bob is
conditioned
a
on
yes.
the fence being as presented.
Okay, Bob is a yes. I too am a yes. Tess?
No.
Tess is a no. Ron?
Yes.
Ron is a yes. Lee? Lee Jameson?
I vote no.
Lee votes no. Okay, that leaves Mark. Back to you, Mark. You're gonna be the tiebreaker here.
Pressure.
Oh, man.
My goodness. What do you want to ask Chris? It's up to you and Chris, Mark.
I keep looking off to the side because I'm measuring 6 feet in my, it's like, how tall is 6? Because Chris, I have to tell you, if this weren't so tall, I love the idea of the having the inch between. I think that helps a lot, and it is a great idea. I wish you had come in at maybe even 5 feet instead of 6, and you probably would have swayed me. But I have to say that right now I'm a no at this point. Sorry.
Okay, Mark is
Appreciate
no.
your comments. Thank you.
All right, and Lee, you had your hand up. I don't know if it's, Lee, did you want to say something? You've already voted, Lee, so I guess we'll continue that for next time. All right, let me tell you the vote. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 no's and 3 yeses. So 3, 5, 0. And the motion does not carry. Thank you very much, Chris, for your presentation, and best of luck to you.
Thank you. I really appreciate you guys letting us present it and the time, and I'll talk to my client. Thank you very much.
Very
Thank
good.
you, Chris.
Thanks again. Okay, so moving on, we are going to item 6.1, which is the state legislative agenda. Item contract.
Yes, I will. If there's anything else time sensitive, the legislature is currently in recess, so there will be nothing lost or changed particularly if we, well, if we wait, if you want to put something else first, but otherwise I'll do a quick overview.
Yeah, you're good. Go ahead,
Okay.
Tess.
All right, so let's see here. So let me pull this up. All right, so we're tracking mostly housing and some homeless shelter items, both at the state and the city council level. So let's see, because my list that I've tracked is out of order in comparison to the list on the agenda. So I apologize if I'm going to hop around here a little bit. Okay, so let's see. I have no updates on AB 2006 Berman. That was, I think, a Ren Blight one. Okay, 2097. This is related to land use parking requirements. It's been amended and referred to committee. There are some concerns about this in the community related to, let me pull up my notes. I have a lot of notes on each of these. It offers a cost savings to developers with no requirements to increase parking for the higher density levels and supplemental units that they already have. This imposes hardship on people who need a car. The job potential is limited when tied to an inadequate public transit system, and it's proven that a person with a car has 30 times more job options. While I know that the community wants to see auto use contained, I suppose would be the best word. You can't throw out the baby with the bathwater, at least not yet. It just makes it harder for people to survive in California, and it raises some severe safety concerns for people who leave work or return home late at night and have to walk quite a distance from remote street parking, which unfairly burdens residents who carry equipment or cannot walk far due to health, age, or disability. There's also a concern about the burden created on charging electric vehicles. Where will they be charged? So AB 2097, currently the recommendation of my community is oppose unless amended. So the next one, AB, let's see.
I have to interject, Tess.
Of course.
I didn't hear anything about, I appreciate like your, whatever sources you have for an assessment and why you think we should oppose it, but you didn't talk about what the bill does.
Okay.
It would eliminate statewide parking minimum for housing projects that are within a transit quality or a high quality transit area, which is a defined term in the Public Resource Code. And removing parking minimums, this is my editorial, but like it's based on fact, is just removing parking minimums does not remove. Am I getting a lot of feedback? Removing parking minimums does not remove parking from a project. It just allows for the applicant to build at whatever they found is necessary for, in their analysis of like what parking need for the area is, for the type of like tenant that they're having. You should have, the idea is that you should be building projects with less parking when you're right next to, the NoHo red line or the B line station. We shouldn't be building parking when people could be using that alternative mode of transportation, because parking is land, and the more with a minimum are often onerous, and it increases the cost of the whole project, and thus the whole part of housing. So that's, I'm not going to do this for all of them, but I just think you need to say what the bills.
That's fair enough, Brandon, and very good. So, but to respond to that, parking is certainly important and adds to the cost. And the less parking there is, the greater the profit margin for the developer. And I'm hesitant to leave such a decision on the utility and need for parking to, to a developer exclusively. And, I think some parking requirements are needed, but we can do a deeper dive into this. I'm certainly interested in hearing more from you on this, and I'm watching it very carefully. You make valid points. I thank you. All right. Are there any other comments?
Nope.
Okay. So moving on to the Housing Cost Reduction Incentive Program. I believe this was one of your bills. Ren, do you have anything on that?
There we go. The information I had at the moment is that they're amending this bill, and I think we should kind of stand back and wait for them to hit us with the final version. They may put it with other bills as well. They may meld some things together in some kind of omnibus. So we'll have to watch on this one.
Yes. We had District Director Steve Ferguson from the 46th Assembly District speak to our Government Affairs Committee meeting earlier this month, and he gave us a rundown on what's going on and the position that the Assembly member is taking. And we discussed positions that we would like the Assembly member to take. And at this point, it's being supported by Adrian Nazarian, and it's been amended and has been referred back to Committee on Appropriations. So that's 2186. Let's see. Unless there are any questions, I will power forward. AB 2244 Wix.
David Wheatley has his hand up.
Sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah, thanks. I had mine up earlier, but I got disconnected. When you come back in, you have to re-raise your hand. So everybody knows that. I think it's awesome that this committee has this kind of report underway. Kudos to those who are preparing them and presenting them. I would urge Fred to take charge of the meeting. And if the designated person gets to do their report, they should either go one item at a time and ask for feedback, or go through the whole list and ask for feedback. And the developers will eke out as much money as possible out of these projects. And if everybody can look up Stanley Milgram, Milgram, if you did not study that in college or high school, now would be a really good time to look it up and see his studies on authority and obedience. And we're seeing some of that kind of obedience here in the meeting tonight. So it's a very dangerous situation when we're putting our trust in people who are subject to what was exposed in the Milgram experiments going on right here. And I hope you'll keep these reports coming. Also, the fact that they're out of session makes them all the more dangerous, because they're able to discuss this stuff privately, poolside or wherever. And the meetings that they're having are not happening in public. So it's at our own peril that we let any of these days off for them go unchecked and unchallenged. Thanks.
Good point, David. Thank you. And I will mention something that I learned 2 weeks ago with Steve Ferguson, and that is, or last week, the California State Legislature is not subject to the Brown Act. So that's new. I did not know that. Second, David, we can certainly ask the committee. I think if there are any questions or thoughts on each bill as we go through them, that might be better. We can certainly do comments at the very end. Does anybody feel strongly about that one way or the other? Ren, you appear.
I'd like to continue to go through them one at a time. Some of them we won't say
Yeah.
much about, but let's do them one at a time.
Okay.
I have a couple of comments on particular ones. So.
Okay, I actually agree, because if it goes deep, it's hard to remember going back. Okay, so going on to AB 2244 WIX, this is religious institution affiliated housing, co-located place of worship. This would enable some housing on religious institution property. And as of now, as of the 30th of June, it was ordered to engrossing and enrolling, which I understand is a procedural move to delay it. And that is the status of that at this moment. Any thoughts? Okay.
It passed the. Oh, just kidding. Never mind. Continue.
I beg your pardon, Brandon, did I miss?
I was looking at the votes. I think I'm confused. So
Okay.
never mind.
All right, so there are no comments. I'll move on to the next one. Let's see, AB 2334. Look that one up. It's a lot of stuff. Okay, the density bonus law, providing incentives or concessions in very low vehicle travel areas. It establishes some parking standards and some definitions, and it's been referred as of the 30th of June to the Committee on Appropriations. The people in my neighborhood and the community folks that I talked to oppose this. So if there are any comments?
Yeah.
Thoughts?
I have a
David has-
comment.
So Ren first, David next.
Yeah, I talked to several people in other neighborhood councils, and they're particularly worried about this one. One of the ironies of this is that we remember when there was the TOC, which allowed for higher density area for projects that were within a certain distance of transportation nodes. And it's sort of like now they're going the other extreme, allowing higher density in places with very little transportation nodes. So it's just sort of ironic in a sense that first it's close to a transportation node, now it's far from a transportation node. And of course, eventually those two will come together in some way, so it's everywhere. But in any event, there's real concern about this bill, and there's a lot of community organizations that are coming out against it in more rural areas because they see themselves suddenly being stuck with some large project out in the middle of an area that really is not doesn't have the infrastructure to support it.
Do you know offhand, Ren, which organizations are concerned about this?
I could get that for you. I didn't take notes when I was listening to there was a whole session on Saturday morning on planning, and they went over this pretty quickly, and my notes weren't good for that. But
would you be so kind? I would love to know. I would love to
yeah,
know.
I will.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I think somebody else had a comment.
David Wheatley had a comment. Go ahead, David.
All of these, I've been studying them for a while. Density bonus, transit-oriented communities, reduced parking, and now this one taking land from religious institutions. All this stuff is sold to the public like snake oil under the guise of affordable housing, where in reality it's luxury housing, much of which is held like shares of stock until they appreciate and they're vacant. While at the same time, the housing industrial complex, a term I learned a few days ago, continues on unabated as we have people sleeping under bridges and are left there. So as to annoy and aggravate the public into supporting these types of bills. We all know, I hope by now, what happened with Coenga Bloomfield as a density bonus project, way, way over scale. Transit-oriented communities have one bus goes by in 100 years, it's a transit-oriented community. And they give next to nothing that helps the public good. So I urge all of us to oppose these bills. When they say, well, nobody's using transit-oriented communities or density bonus, doesn't mean they should be made more attractive. They're already unattractive and they should be dismantled and taken apart and abolished. Thank you.
All right, so moving right along, unless there are more comments, we now go to, thank you, David, SB 948, Becker Housing Finance Programs and Development Reserves. This was a bill that you wanted on the agenda. Ren, do you have any updates on it? The only thing I have is that it's passed committee and has been re-referred to appropriations. SB.
Yeah, no comment on this. I think it's.
Okay. All right, very good. AB 682. Planning and zoning, more density bonus legislation. It's been amended and referred to Committee on Appropriations. I think there's some good points on this particular bill. Unless you want me to go into it, this our community would support. And I'm speaking for the community that I represent. They would support this if amended. And it looks like Adrian Nazarian would as well, according to District Director Steve Ferguson. So any comments?
What number was this?
I beg your pardon. This is AB 682 Bloom.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, moving right quickly through these. AB 916, Salas, Quirk, Silva, and several other co-authors. This is ADUs and bedroom additions. Let me look this up. All right, so it's passed committee on the 30th of June. It's been re-referred to appropriations. There's some concern with height on the part of the assembly member, and our community echoes that concern. So it would allow an additional bedroom. This is, as I said, it's been re-referred to Committee on Appropriations. So that's AB 916. Any questions? All right. So Fred, I'm going to count on you to call on questions because I've got like 45 documents open here. I'm not looking at the screen. Okay. Yes. Next up, we have almost finished here, AB 1944. Let's see, and AB 2449. These are related to open and blended meetings. Was some discussion at our Government Affairs Committee meeting on this. A hearing on this was postponed. The AB 2449 has been amended and re-referred to Committee on Appropriations. There's some discussion as to what those specific limitations are. Let me see. Let me read my notes and translate. Existing constitutional provisions require that a statute that limits the right of access to the meetings of the public bodies or the writings of public officials and agencies be adopted with findings demonstrating the interest protected by the limitation and the need for protecting that interest. So we oppose unless that's amended. That limitation is a little bit uncomfortable. And that's AB 2449. All right. Is there any questions? Moving right along to Council File 220158. This is the LA City Council on homeless shelters. This was discussed, and our neighborhood council passed a community impact statement, which was just filed and submitted a few days ago by Catherine Hatton.
No,
There's a
same
fair
way
amount.
to speak.
Was there a question?
No, that was Bob's microphone. I muted it.
Okay, very good. So we're just watching how this goes through the city council. We, I know there was a related item that was discussed and voted on July 1st related to creating distances from sensitive use sites like schools and I think bridges. I'm sorry, some of these bills sort of blend into one another, but Councilmember Krikorian, I think, spoke very eloquently and voted in favor of that particular restriction. But we're watching this city council bill right now, 220158, brought forward by Bonin, Raman, and Blumenfeld regarding homeless shelters in R1, R2 zones. The CIS that the neighborhood council passed and voted on to pass last month was to at least give the community opportunity for input. And I will say also parenthetically that in his speech on the council chamber floor on July 1st, Councilmember Krikorian said that we have enough shelter in CD2 to house every unhoused person. So I think that is a very, very important fact as we're discussing the need for these shelters. I'm taking him at his word and I believe him. So there's that. Unless there are any comments, I will move to the next item. And all right. So
We actually have a comment. We have a comment from Jonathan Gregory. Go
Okay.
ahead, Jonathan.
Go ahead.
Thanks. I'll go fast. It's just on that last thing about the shelters in R1, R2. What never gets discussed because it's so awful to talk about, but I think actually people don't understand if they've never lived in third world country, that gastrointestinal infections spread when there's not hand washing facilities and all of the hygienic things that we have in our homes. I don't really know what the council members who proposed that had in mind. But when you have a shelter in someone's backyard, I get the image of like tents back there. And I'm wondering what the controls are. If you look online, you actually see there was a Shigella outbreak in San Diego that started in the homeless population and bled out. I think it was 2021. But in any case, I think these are things that are not getting talked about. And it just ought to be in everyone's mind, especially this committee, because it has to do with housing and development. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And that was in 2021 in San Diego, Jonathan?
I think so. I read so much. It's pretty recent. Thanks.
Very good. So that's what I have for the update. If there's anything in particular someone wants to put on the agenda, a bill somebody wants to follow, please let me know. I'm scanning lots of sources and I'll put things on that I think need attention or are relevant. And of course, everybody here is welcome to do the same. If there aren't any questions, moving right along to 6.2, state constitutional amendment, creating the State Housing Authority. Let me see here. Hold on, let me get my notes on this. So there is a great deal of support for this, including from our Assembly member, Adrian Nazarian. You can read the text there. It brought forward by Wicks, Bennett, Carrillo, and Rivas. It authorizes development, construction, or acquisition of developments composed of urban or rural dwellings, apartments, or other living accommodations for persons of low income, financed in whole or in part by the federal government or a state public body, or to which the federal government or a state public body extends assistance, etc. So it will need obviously to go before voters, but that is looking promising, at least as of now. So that concludes my legislative report, unless anybody has any questions, thoughts, comments, or poems. Hearing none. seeing none.
Brent has his hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the State Housing Authority. My take on, the sociology of public housing is that it's been proven to be at best problematic, and for the state to, in my perspective, regress back to creating public housing projects, I think is a huge mistake. And I can only hope that cooler heads will prevail and the state won't get into the housing business. I don't want to sound too much like Jonathan Gregory, but these projects have a tendency to take a long time and be very expensive per unit, and end up not being a very great quality and so forth. So there's a long history with public housing, and it's not good. In the city of LA, we do have like 40,000 units of public housing, and they've gone back and redone a number of the projects to a point where a number of them are actually pretty good place to live. But it takes a lot of work and a lot of oversight from people and a lot of policing.
Yeah, well, Ren, you brought that up at the Government Affairs Committee, and if you're referring to AB 2053, the one that would enact the Social Housing Act to create a California Housing Authority, that's dead as of the 30th of June.
Right.
And you also mentioned that there were, gang-related issues related to that, which, it's not, I think these problems can be overcome, but I'm with you. I think it would just take too long and cost too much, and that's, So anyway, all right.
It doesn't pop back up again, that's all.
Okay, very good. Brandon has a question.
I'm a little confused about when I look up ACA 14, it says University of California. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong year. Never mind. Okay, so that helps. Okay, so I just wanted to, my understanding is, okay, this measure would require investment.
Which one are you talking about, Brandon? ACA
14.
Okay.
My understanding of this was that there's, hold on, let me just not like have you hear me like think. Let me, there's another constitutional amendment. Maybe it's a Senate constitutional amendment. It was going to repeal Article 34 of the state constitution.
I'm not, what would that?
Article 34 prohibits the development of low-income affordable housing with state or local public financing or assistance unless and until a majority of voters of the jurisdiction has approved of it. So if, Ren was talking about public housing, the city of Los Angeles, I think my understanding is that they could still build another public housing, but it would have to be voted by all 4 million of us. And is this that constitutional amendment? It would repeal that, so that way, it's all very like confusing with like when redevelopment left, when Jerry Brown ended redevelopment. But anyway, I just overall, I'm curious if folks think that developers are lining their pockets for projects, but then another option is that if the government builds housing to address a need, but then that's, and I know like the history of public housing is because has gone awry because it's a roller coaster of funding, and a lack of investment that really like led to a lot of its downfall 50 years ago, or more. But I just wonder, like, do people have an opinion on like how else are we to address our problems? It's just maybe it's just a rhetorical question, but these are the things that I think about.
I have some, responses on that, but first, let me make sure I understand what you're saying. You're confused and Article 34 prohibits housing unless and until a majority of voters approve of it. Prohibits public housing.
Yeah, I don't think ACA 14 deals with.
No, I don't think those are two different things, because what you're saying is the first time I've heard of that. ACA 14 proposes to the people of the state of California an amendment to the Constitution, adding Section 24 to Article 16 relating to homelessness. So I'll send you the link if you like, but it's on the openstates.org website. So there's that. Related to building and more building, to give you my thoughts on your comment, or to at least respond to it. We have over 360,000 people left the state of California in 2021. It's become one of the most expensive states to live in. Average home prices are at $800,000, and only 25% of the state's households can afford that. I'm giving you some, bullet points from an NBC News item that ran just a few weeks ago on June 14th. California's population growth has been declining for over 30 years. So this is, a trend that's continuing, and it's accelerated because of the work from home and remote work trends. So we now also have the highest gas prices in the country. 62% of Americans are considering moving to another country, and Americans are now driving up the cost of housing abroad and pricing locals out of their market. Once again, this is from an NBC News newsreel on June 14th, 2022, just a few weeks ago. So I think it's hard to reconcile these facts, for me personally, with the state legislature's quote housing crisis and declaration, or what I consider to be largely developer propaganda, that affordable housing is going to emerge from more building and population density. I don't see it happening. We have water water shortage now. We have that crisis, I think, is real. And I read on a blog somewhere, when somebody asked how to fix this, another guy responded with a very simple answer. He said, stop building. So I think that the quote unquote housing crisis, personally, is a false narrative. We have 3.5% vacancy rate in California. Certainly in the denser areas, it's going to be harder to find housing. But I've also just seen recently a statistic that 4 out of 5 rental units are now owned by corporations. So this is the problem. Building more does not solve those very real and actual problems. So those are my opinions, and based on what I see as the facts. And if I'm given, new facts, I will certainly consider them. So that's what I have to say about that.
Well, thank you very much, Tess. That's very informative, and I agree a lot of with what we said. And yikes, where do we go from here? But thank you so much for informing all of us.
You're welcome. And Brandon, we do need you around to kick our asses a bit, because I don't want to overly rely on any information, and I think all authority has to be questioned. So anyway, that is.
Well, I disagree. We need to build more housing.
Okay.
There.
There it is. All right. Well done, and power to you. So that ends my legislative report, unless Mark Stevenson has a comment or a poem. Go ahead, Mark.
I just wanted to piggyback off of what you just shared,
Sure.
Tess, that since the pandemic, I've easily between 10 and 15% of my congregation has moved out of state.
Okay,
And in fact, this past week, 4 more people are moving out of state. But one of the things I would like to see hammered on are slum landlords.
yes.
Because I have talked to people who are just being taken to the cleaners, and it's by slum landlords, and then they have to go to court, or it is a huge deal for them whenever they're having to fight for their rights to correct situations. So I would love to be able to see some of that also happening, because it doesn't help, because what they do is they get rid of the tenants so that they can hike the prices.
That doesn't
And
help anyone except
it
the
doesn't help
landlord.
anybody.
But Brandon, if you could make sure that you send the committee these links to the housing organization, the rental group that you mentioned at the top of the hour, that would be great, because I would really like to look into that and share that with people. Please.
Yes, stayhousedla.org.
Stayhousedla.org. Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay, we got Bob has a comment.
Fred?
Go ahead, Bob.
Okay. Now, I just had a quick question for Mark. Where are they moving, Mark? Do you know? Mark?
Yeah.
You mentioned
So
15
I've
to 10.
had, it's very interesting. I've had now 4 people move to North Carolina.
Uh-huh.
Only a couple to St. Louis, 1 to Chicago, but more of them are moving more to I would say less populated area, and also what they consider to be more family friendly. So that's actually what's happening for us. Yeah, it's disturbing.
No, it is. I happen to agree with Brandon. We need more housing to lower the cost of housing. I don't know if anybody's been recently in the rental market, but they're providing 1-bedroom apartments, which are hardly luxury, for $2,500. These are older buildings. They're not new buildings. They're older buildings. And it's a supply and demand. So it's going to take a long, long time, I understand, to get a supply to bring down those prices. But something has to be done to protect those renters. 62% of Toluca Lake rent, and they have no protection. The housing people have made a lot of money during the pandemic. The rental people have become much more poorer through the pandemic. So the state is trying to build density in order to provide housing for people who are desperately needed. That's
well, Robert, half of what you say is true, and half of it I disagree with completely, which is we do need more affordable housing, because there's practically none of that. That's a true statement. But the trickle down theory of economics has been shown not to work. And if I'm wrong, please give me examples of where building greater density would be helpful. Toronto tried that and bought into that for years, and they now deeply regret it. So where you see trickle down economics working in housing, please let me know.
No, I'm sorry, but I don't think it's trickle down economics. That's proven to be false back into the 80s when we had a president who told us that was the case. No, I'm just talking about people are desperate to live someplace, and it's not just LA. It's all major cities. It's all over the country. I moved here from Miami. You can't even afford Miami. Most of the people who live in Toluca Lake can't afford the house they're in because of the price increases. So it's a serious problem. If it's not higher density or higher number of housing, then please somebody come up with a solution, because all we do is say no, 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 and not in my backyard.
Well, I will say no, no, no to policy that I believe is bad. And Bob, higher density does not equate to lower prices, but you and I don't agree on that. So I think.
And also, I disagree with you that, California is losing population. It's since in the last 30 years, it's gone up by 30%.
Well, not according to NBC, but I think Brandon has a question.
Maybe this could wrap it up, but I finally found like an explainer on ACA 14. And what this is because it's a constitutional amendment, it would, if passed by the legislature, it would go to the voters for approval, like as a proposition. And it says ACA 14 would dedicate 5% of the general fund annually for the next 10 years to fund solutions to end homelessness and build affordable housing. I think it's designed to address the shortfalls of affordable housing funds, because affordable housing financing, I kind of sort of wish I knew more information about that. It's very complicated, but all I know is that there's always the talk of there's a lack of affordable housing funds that could be dished out. So another thing I saw is that it would set aside, I guess that 5% would equate to $10 billion in housing funding each year, which would be enough to house 50,000 people who are homeless and build an additional 40,000 affordable housing units each year. So anyway, that's just something I found. So I just wanted
Is
to share.
that from the openstates.org? I think you found that somewhere else, Brandon.
I'm just pulling from different things. Yeah.
Okay,
But anyway, thanks for the discussion.
that's very good. And that has some possibilities. So I am finished with my legislative update, unless anybody has questions, but it looks like Jonathan has a question.
John has a question. For what it's worth, really quick, I just Googled California's population growth in the past decade. And in 10 years from 2010 to 2020, it has grown by 5%. However, the rate of population has slowed tremendously. And over the past 2 years, it actually has declined. So if you Google that, you'll have shed some light on that. So both of you are correct on the growth and the decline. Just wanted to throw some of that in on that. Jonathan Gregory, go ahead.
Thank you. Just to remind you on population, you're right, Fred. It's been in recent years that we've lost 750,000 Californians. So it depends on what your timeline is, whether you can say we're losing people or we've gained people, but less immigration, less birth, and people moving out. About the housing, I wanted to say two things. Homelessness, I don't really like the word because you have to know about the person. What you can say is they're sheltered or they're not sheltered. Unsheltered people, I'm getting lots of information about Greater Toluca Lake. We know that all of the people who work for the city have offered the people we see unsheltered in CD2 shelter. So generally, we could say anyone you see living in the streets, generally, there may be exceptions, has not accepted assistance. That gets us to the next point is it's not just about housing, it's about psychiatric and medical care. And we really have to start talking about this because I'm discovering through our council members' office that a lot of people aren't talking about where those missing beds are that we need in the psychiatric centers, because the people I'm seeing on the streets appear, by my layman's term, not capable of taking care of themselves. There's something drastically wrong with the picture we see. So it's a bigger picture, not just building houses, but it's about medical care, the medical system. It's about psychiatric care. It's about all that kind of stuff coming together. But we're being, I think, deceived into believing it's all about building houses. If they can't take care of themselves on the street corner for 3 days, something's wrong with putting them in the house with an expectation that self-sufficiency will be there. Makes no sense. One other thing, in the 22 to 23 Los Angeles budget, it's worth a review and it's worth looking at Ron Halperin, or however his name is.
Halperin, the city controller.
The city controller's analysis. $1 billion just this year into homelessness, they call it. If you divide that by our 45,000 unsheltered, that's about $22,000 a person, of unsheltered person in the city, not the county. That's 65,000, they say. So there's a lot of money. If you go back, it's either 5 or 10 years, $7 billion was spent in Los Angeles. It's a big business already, just like housing and development. And as taxpayers, we have to keep our eyes open. But within the Greater Toluca Lake District, ours is a situation where there are shelter beds available for everyone who is in the council district. That's what we've heard from our council member, and that's what the statistics are telling us. And that should be influencing us about steps we take forward in our Greater Toluca Lake Neighborhood Council. Thank you.
I will just add to that, Jonathan, and thank you. Yeah, the July 1st city council meeting, Krikorian's discussion on homelessness and his vote take place in about 2 hours, 2:00, if you scroll through the video. And one of the things that Ron Galperin warns about in that analysis is because the LA City Council puts the rosiest sort of tint upon the budget, how things are great. But Galperin, the LA City controller, warns us that a lot of these programs that have been funded by the CARES Act and the infusion of huge amounts of money from the federal government will run out of money, because that's one-time money, that's not ongoing. And this is a bit of a concern, especially for council members and others who don't look much beyond a term or two. So we have to be careful about which of those programs will end up running out of funds and what that will mean, as nice as the picture may look now. So that's it for me.
Okay, we got Bob next. Bob, you had your hand up, now it's down. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I got you. You muted me, so I forgot. We kind of morphed from housing, which is a separate issue, from homeless. And, you know, my wife was very active, literally 50 years ago, and the #1 issue in our community, this was New York City, was homelessness. And here we are now 50 years later and hearing the exact same arguments that I heard 50 years ago. So the problem is not going to go away. It's going to be talked about for the next 50 years until we as a people recognize the issue and bring it up to the federal level where it was, until we had an administration in the 80s that closed down all the mental institutions and dumped them onto the streets, and then cut all the safety nets for the people who had medical issues. And then well, I won't go on any further than that. So the federal government has to step up if you're going to solve this problem. There's no way we can afford to provide housing for all the homeless people. But that's a separate issue from housing, which Tess and I were talking about, which is, should we or should we not build more housing? You know, and I do agree with Brandon. The rental market is getting decimated, and pretty soon people will be, the landlords are just going crazy asking unreasonable rents for very old buildings. And soon they'll be evicting them when their protections go away. So what do we do? And I'm not saying, if somebody has a better idea how to address the shortage of housing, please, I'm all ears. I'm not happy to admit that I'm wrong. But don't confuse housing with the homeless.
I don't think I did, but that's.
No, not your Tess. It just went from that. You and I were talking housing. And I think Jonathan brought in homeless. And I always value Jonathan's input. It's well thought out, and he's articulate and intelligent. But I think to me, maybe I'm wrong, we kind of veered into homeless.
Well, he did veer into homelessness, but I believe the connection is, and Jonathan can speak for himself if I'm misinterpreting, that a lot of the push for housing is based on homeless needing homes. So, but I think the two issues get conflated. Jonathan, if I've got it wrong, set me straight. I guess not. All right, in that case. So I thought I had.
Yes, I was muted. I was agreeing with that housing and homeless, it's being conflated. That was my point. I'm sorry I wasn't clearer. That was my point, is that housing and homeless are being turned into one issue, and we need to separate, especially in our council where we live in Greater Toluca Lake, is we have to look closely at the division between the two. Thank you.
And Bob, just so you know, there's no one who will fight more ferociously than I will about rent gouging. It has me seething. So I'm going to review everything that Brandon told us later. So anyway.
Well, certainly we're on the same side there, Tess. And it's just that, it's capitalism run amok, and it's a basic system that has to change, and we as people have to change as well.
I agree. All right. So Fred,
Okay, back to me. We're going to go to 6.3. Actually, let me check if there's any comments. No comments. Raised hand. 6.3 Southeast.
Wait, I'm sorry. Let me take this, Fred, real quickly. There was a presentation and a good deal of discussion about the Ventura Boulevard Cahuenga Pass specific plan. And although that's not in Toluca Lake, that corridor, there was quite a bit of discussion about additional development all along that corridor. And one target area is the basically the parking area around the Universal transit stop. So, keep an eye on that. They're going to come back with probably a huge project in there with, maybe thousands of people ultimately planned for that site. So, we need to keep watching that.
clarification, Ren, when you say they are probably going to put a huge project there, you say LA City Planning, who are you talking about they?
The planning department is going to, rezone that property, create a specific plan for that area and propose a redevelopment. I don't know. I go back to when there was a huge proposal out of Universal to build on that whole big lot in there, a huge development. And the community fought it and ultimately kept it from happening. But it could pop back again, and we need to be on top of it and make sure it's planned appropriately so we don't get overwhelmed with a lot of new people who don't have the broader services and whatever, and the broader capacity within their new development to meet all their needs.
And Ren, where would that be precisely? Would that be on the west side of Lancashire where the transit stop is now? Where would?
Right.
Okay.
If you look back, right now it's all parking, that some of it's right there on Lancashire, but then there's a lot of parking that goes back along the freeway there.
Okay.
And it could be a huge development if we're and it could be a good development if it's well planned and developed, but if it's just huge high-rise apartments, it could be real problematic.
And can I ask you?
More importantly, if I may, Fred, the B item, future meeting with the planning department staff. I've been working with Miles Orr and blanking on her name for a minute, but the lady who has you're part of the area north of the freeway test. Anyway, the planners are now back to ready to present the community plan for the Southeast Valley, and we can schedule a meeting with them. And so I'm going to be sending out a email requesting times and dates for people that would be convenient, so we can get together with the planners and really get a presentation on our plan. I think maybe it should be a special meeting of the planning committee where we just have a one-item agenda and meet with the planners and go over it. It'll probably take a couple of hours for them to make a presentation and for us to start with our questions.
Is there any preliminary information available on that yet, Ren? No.
No, there really isn't. So this specific plan for the Cahuenga Pass Ventura Boulevard is kind of it was a delaying factor, and because they had to incorporate it into the community. It was a specific plan before, and now it's getting incorporated, but now they've done that. And so now we're back on our agenda for our community. We need to, the thing I'm afraid of is that they're behind their calendar, and they'll try to make up time by shorting us on time for us to have input. And I want to make sure that doesn't happen.
And how much input would we normally have under normal circumstances?
3 months probably, as it would be a
Okay.
normal timeframe.
And you mentioned a lady over in my neck of the woods that you're working with. What kind of lady, if I may ask?
Oh, she's a planner, yeah, community planner, and she's got the, that part, the sort of North Toluca Lake and going north from there into North Hollywood. And
Is she an LA City planner or
yeah,
okay, Sarah Hansel, maybe? I don't know.
that sounds right. Yeah.
Okay. All right, possibly Sarah. Okay, very good.
Ren, I just had a quick question. My understanding was that Universal City is an unincorporated area of LA County and not a part of the city of Los Angeles. And so is the metro property part of the LA County, part of Universal City, or is it part of LA City? Does it really matter in this case?
It's part of LA City. Yeah, the Universal is actually, you look at the city lines, it's just off of Lankershim. So there are parts of Universal that are actually in the city of LA. Most of it is its own little part of the county, unincorporated. But last time around, they got both the city and the county to work together on their plan. And their environmental, they did a joint environmental. And that's where everybody showed up and basically said, we don't like it, to a point where the council people, Tom LaBonge, among others, basically said, we got to go back to the drawing boards on this. This isn't going to work.
So as far as we're concerned, it's still part of LA City. And one other comment is that parking lot obviously is built over subway tunnels. So I wouldn't imagine a very tall buildings could be built there with foundations, being that the tunnels are underneath that. Is there any discussion on that?
Well, I think the engineering technology is, they'd work around it, I'm sure. And we need to, one of the things we have to do is save our historic landmark there, the Campo de Cahuenga. I think it's as important as the Alamo.
Sure.
The Alamo, I won't go into the history, but anyway, it's a very historic spot, and it gets short shrift from the city and other people, but I think it's worth, it's certainly worth saving and enhancing if we can.
I agree with you. Is that not protected from the state?
It is, but it's a small, it's a small little park there, and there isn't a lot of state funding for it, whatever. There's a volunteer group that maintains it and stands up for it. And if, you're looking down from above, you see in Lankershim Boulevard, you see the outline of what the original building was and where it was. But anyway, it's I digress. Let me get on to our agenda. Parking on Foreman under the freeway, that's finally moving forward. And I'm hoping by early fall, we'll have some plans and cost estimates for that. And we can, we'll go back to beautification partners and see if we can get it funded. But I wanted to let you know that's still in the work. We talked about 6.5, 6.6, the project at on Riverside Drive. Tess, you want to talk about that?
I first have a question about the Foreman parking. There's a design feature that I believe is part of the Foreman underpass, which is that there's a chain link fence separating the sidewalk from the actual entrance itself, correct?
Yeah, it's like a no man's land in there. Yeah.
So do you know when or how that was built or constructed? Because we're considering some ideas for keeping our area neat over here in West Toluca Lake, and someone suggested that. Do you know how, by whom, or when that was done? Or was it constructed at the same time as the freeway?
Same as the freeway. They, Foreman was technically a second, whatever, not a second-hand highway, but anyway, a secondary highway. And so when they built the freeway, they were required to give enough room for it to eventually become a secondary highway, which would be 4 lanes and so forth. And of course, that's not going to happen. And I think someplace along the line, it was taken out of the plan as a secondary highway, but by then, of course, the freeway was built. So that space in there is just kind of a dead space.
Okay.
And utilizing it and cleaning up, it looks unfinished and really is an eyesore, I think, and it needs to be finished up. And if we can get more parking, why, that would be a plus. But we want to get some designs that we can show people, especially the neighbors around there, so they can see what we're talking about. And secondarily, we need cost estimates so we can go figure out where we might get funding for it. There's some other sources out there that we can go after. And we're looking for those, but until we have something to really ask for, we've really been frustrated. The last year and a half, the city has just stalled this thing. And there's no excuse for it. It was really, yeah, very frustrating. But it's finally, they've kicked our little contract loose. The $7,500 for the plans came from a grant from the GTLNC, and so we're reporting back on the grant. So it's finally going to get done, and we'll have plans and we'll be able to discuss it.
Do you know what the timeline is for that completion?
It'll take them 2 to 3 months, I think. Not long, I hope. Maybe sooner than that. They did some preliminary work, but that was 2 years ago or more. So it's, we'll have to see.
Okay.
I haven't talked to WRD directly to get their time frame for when they do the work.
Okay. All right. So
Okay, so then
update on the 105, 10057, 10063 Riverside Drive, 6.6 item. I know there's still some activity going on there, but I have nothing to report. So nothing conclusive at this time.
Did you see that UPS moved?
That's actually been the case for a while. I know that they were, yeah. So.
No, it's more recent test. I think it was only a couple of months ago. They moved over to Burbank side, 4400 Riverside is where they're at now.
Well, I think Brandon's saying they just probably opened up, right? The past couple of days.
It's
Yeah,
open.
like I saw the sign for the new location, and then for the first time I saw maybe a week or who knows, I don't know, a sign for this location for this project that they've moved. So that's all I wanted to say.
I didn't know that. I was there last week and they were still on Riverside. So that's great.
UPS? No, not the post office, Fred. UPS.
I know. I was there like right before 4th of July, sending a package on the Riverside Drive one.
Gotcha.
I go there all the time.
At least
They're
that's
like,
what
"You're
Yeah,
like
me too. I'm gonna miss
me over there."
Yeah, I'm gonna miss the post office too.
I know. No,
I use that for a lot of packages. Yep.
me too. I love
my
that.
understanding is the new UPS is on the Burbank side now.
Yeah, it's 4400 West Riverside.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Anyway, that's all.
Well, thank you for that. And what else? Back to new business. How do we like that? And I guess Tess, I'm going to hand it back over to you.
All right. Summary of the RENA Reform Public Information and Input Session on Wednesday, July 6th, which I attended last week. RENA is the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, which is part of HCD, Housing and Community Development, which has put together these numbers for what ostensibly are housing needs, but that is being fought tooth and nail and appealed. So this discussion was to get some public input and explain once again the RENA allocation plan and the objectives that it's supposed to meet. So sort of in summary, we learned that 52 appeals in 49 jurisdictions were heard. Each had a hearing and only 2 of the appeals were granted, totaling about 3,100 units, which will need to be redistributed proportionally back to, within the 3.5 million allocations within that region. So there were bases for appeal. I won't go into that since the appeal period has passed, but various regions were reviewed. The auditor's report was published in the state auditor's report published in March 2022, which I believe I alluded to. There were, objections and problems related to the methodology, which the housing needs calculations were based on. So that's been discussed. Just a quick review. The assessment from the California State Auditor, Michael Tilden, said in summary that there were inconsistent vacancy rates, there was improper benchmarking and comparisons, omissions, overcount, inconsistencies in housing unit projections, lack of documentation and methodology to support the findings. So there's also been a report on double counting in the latest housing needs assessment from the Embarcadero Institute. So I attended one of the breakout sessions, which was methodology. I was particularly interested to hear how that was discussed and what people's, comments, objections, questions were. There were about 150 people in the methodology breakout session. So that was, in summary, they're trying to come up with a potential formulaic approach to the RENA distribution that's appropriate for the Southern California Association of Governments, also known as SCAG. SCAG is the acronym. One of the objections that resonated with a lot of people in that methodology breakout was that there's no stated objective and what is SCAG trying to achieve. So there was no discussion about the feasibility. So no feasibility included about units that have become outmoded or locations based on political boundaries and not necessarily regional needs. There's also an inclusionary strategy criticism, which is a rate that, let me see if I can interpret my notes here. Markets are, okay, my notes are unintelligible on this point. Oh yeah, the market here, the scaling, this is an important point. The market rate is only 20% of SCAG's modeling and economic impact, which ignores the fact that if the goal is to construct enough units by 2050 to drive down housing costs, which may not be achievable, they will only achieve 20% of the market rate housing units are only 20% of the modeling and economic impact. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys. I'm not sure actually that quite makes sense to me. It made sense to me at the time, but skipping ahead, let me just put in here that for 191 cities and 6 counties in the Southern California Association of Governments region, they were differently weighted. RENA and HCD are trying to come up with a formulaic approach appropriate for SCAG in order to place all of those housing units. So let's see here. I'm just trying to give you the highlights because I took so many notes here. Oh yes. Okay, this explains the inclusionary approach. All right. Using the inclusionary approach, all right, if the affordable housing that is needed is built, using the inclusionary approach would require 4 to 5 times the stated RENA numbers in order to achieve the affordable housing projections. All right. So land costs and housing costs escalate. I don't want to get too deeply into the weeds. I'm just trying to give you guys highlights here. There were a lot of questions, methodology and challenges in meeting the RENA need, and how are we really trying to calculate that need. There was a lot of back and forth. Some of it was a little bit contentious, but mostly I think it was an interesting discussion. And there are a lot of opinions on all of this, as you can certainly imagine. So that is my summary. If I had time, I would have made it more condensed. So I apologize.
And so this leads,
It's very hard to summarize something like that in a few minutes, so I feel.
What's that, Ren?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's very hard to summarize a big report like that in a couple of minutes, so.
Well, and there was also trying to give people a sense of what some of the comments were in the methodology breakout room. So yes. All right. I think Brandon has a question.
Okay, go ahead, Brandon.
So this is going to go into 7.2, and so there was like an info session, and now there will be another. Is this like the next item on the agenda, the August 1st meeting? Is that like a regional council meeting, or is that just more of this RENA reform information?
Let me check. I just accidentally closed the agenda.
Okay, well then, while you're doing that, one of the things, I know we don't agree on like the undercount or overcount kind of things, but I think that something we could agree on is something that if you attend another thing, or even this group can advocate for the next, well, whatever, just like is we need to have a better set of data is not perfect, and we need to perfect it. So how can we do that? One thing that I think that we can benefit from is a rental registry. I know there's various levels. There's sometimes I think the city of Los Angeles has a version, but it could be improved. But then a statewide rental registry would, any sort of things that can be, any sorts of points of advocacy to bolster up data collection would obviously make the next cycle in 2029 better. So, because when we say 2029, for those who don't know, RENA is an allocation of units. A planning cycle is for 8 years. It started in October 2021, and it'll go through October 2029 for the SCAG region.
And which cycle are we in now, Brandon?
It's called the sixth cycle, but the time frame's 2021 to 2029.
And we're one cycle off from between Northern and Southern California. So I think
I don't know about that, but
I think they're ahead of us, but there's one cycle difference. But in any case, so I actually just discovered a short list of my summary bullet points, which I've forgotten that I created, but never mind that. Brandon, that's something that you and I will absolutely agree on, which is that we need better data, because I think that data is key. And if we don't know what we're working with, we have to get better data and make sure that we have data integrity. So I totally agree with that. And if you were able to find that Los Angeles City rental registry, I would love to see it. I do know that a density bonus registry was supposedly created by HCD, but from people who I know who tried to avail themselves of it, at the time, and it's been over a year, 18 months since I've looked at it, there were complaints that it was inadequate, cumbersome, and out of date, which certainly, if we're going to be talking about density bonus units, people have to know where that is and how to apply for it. And if it's not even clear.
Yeah, I'm more talking about just, I mean, yes, it's twofold. It would support people that need housing, but then also the policy discussion.
Yeah. Well, I think when you say LA rental registry, you just mean basic rentals generally. You're not talking about density bonus or.
I'm not, I don't know, I don't have all the information about the idea of a rental registry, but it's,
So
I know I've heard it in circles as a way to address data gaps. So,
yeah, well, it certainly sounds like it should exist if it doesn't, that it should, but the density bonus registry, just, those types of rental units that are needed by people of, low income, very low income, et cetera. But until recently, and I haven't checked in a while, that registry was out of date, cumbersome, difficult to use, and elicited a lot of complaints from the people who needed it the most. But setting that aside, it looks like Bob has a question.
Yeah, no, I just want to take issue with that comment. Registering, first of all, the affordable housing, the density of affordable housing, we should remember is subsidized by the developers, not the taxpayers, under a 30-year covenant. So they provide those units to people of low income for 30 years in return for those density bonuses. If you go on the housing site, LA housing site, there's a simple form. You just fill it out, you get registered, and then you will get emails whenever these units become available. It could not be easier. So
Okay.
I disagree with the process that was described.
Actually, it's not easy because I'm doing this for my mother, and it's not as easy as you say, Bob, because you do go and register, like you said, but that doesn't mean you get on any list. From there, you go to a website and you have to apply to a wait list on each apartment.
That's
And
different.
that takes a long time to do. Once you get on the wait list, then you go into a lottery, and you don't even know if you're going to win that lottery.
Yeah, what we're talking about again is these affordable housing units that the density bonus is giving us.
That's what I'm talking
I have done exactly what you have done. I filled out the application. It was very simple. And I've been getting emails, probably every 2 weeks, on available units that I can apply for, and an applying means you're in a lottery.
You're in a wait list, and then you go to a
Not a
lottery.
wait list. A wait list is for Section 8s, basically. But
No, I'm doing the same thing, Bob.
these units are made available in the lottery.
Once you're approved on the wait list, they
Right.
are.
Yeah. So then you get in, if your application is accepted, and you have to prove that you have the income levels to justify it. Once your application is accepted, then you get into the lottery. And it's hard to get. I'm not saying it's easy. Of course, everybody wants one of these.
Very
units.
hard to get.
Yeah, well, because they're $500 or $600 a month when they should be the market rate is $2,000. So everybody wants one, but it's not difficult.
Robert, send me the link to that application form. I'd like to see it.
LA housing, just go to the, what is it, LASA or
Okay.
I can't think of it all.
Housing department, it's not LASA.
It's
It's where I looked
Yeah.
at it before was HCD, not LASA.
No, he's talking about LA's city department. LASA's the LA Housing Homeless Services Authority.
It's LA housing who
It's
oversees.
now the department has changed multiple times, but it's called LA Housing, I think now, or LA HACLA.
Something like that.
Well,
Yeah.
one last comment on that. I've been doing this for 2 years for my mom, and we haven't even
Nothing?
gotten to the point where we
Have you submitted, have you got into a lottery? Let me put it that way.
we are only on a wait list. No, we have not got, and I've like 10 buildings that are on a wait list for her, and none of them have proceeded further than that over 2 years.
And
So-
these are density.
Yes,
Okay.
Affordable housing
so
units, like the Bloomfield and Coanga.
correct.
It would appear that there's more than one such list and that they are for slightly different purposes. Brandon, you mentioned one for LASA.
No, I was just speaking broadly
Okay,
to not, I think a lot of Fred and Bob are talking about affordable housing, if I'm correct.
Density bonus units.
Yeah. I'm talking about all types of housing, rental housing, to have an idea of what's vacant, what's not vacant, you know, an understanding of what is a person's second home, what's truly on the market, kind of thing. I'm talking about comprehensive information, data, census type registry instead of there's other wait lists and things. So it's a much broader statewide
all right.
policy initiative.
Well, there's federal funded apartments, which are Section 8 apartments,
Right.
and those are difficult to get. They are very difficult to get. Any property you apply for, which has Section 8, has a long wait list, and it's very difficult to get into those apartments. I just got an email, I think it was 3 days ago, for one of the most expensive properties in LA, the LA Grand. That was that huge building that they put up.
Mhm.
And there's probably 50 or 60 affordable housing units in that building.
Mhm.
And I got it on my email. I filled out an application because, like you, I'm looking for somebody. I filled out the application, and then we'll have to wait to see if you snag one of those apartments, but it's very difficult.
Have you gotten any above any of the wait lists into a lottery? Just curious, or we can take it offline, Bob. We don't have to do it here.
Yeah,
But I would like to. I'd love to talk to you about it.
Yeah. My understanding, no, yes, I've gotten into the lotteries, but
You have.
first of all, they favor it. A couple of times I went into like Burbank or Glendale, and they'll favor residents, which they understandable. They favor the residents in those areas. So you're on the bottom of that list. Residents are at the top of the list. But no, I haven't been successful. It's like fishing.
Got to keep trying.
You get bites.
You got to. You got. I'm not giving up. So
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I tried for a while to help somebody get one of those, and I just couldn't believe the difficulty of it. I couldn't believe it. And I'm pretty relentless.
Yeah, but we were talking about the application process. I think the city has done, I have to defend the city. I think they've done a good job in allowing you to apply for it. It is difficult to get, though. You're absolutely right, Tess. And it's just very, very difficult
Well,
to get.
I recall
Very
the
difficult.
application process being tedious beyond comprehensions. But anyway, we don't need to continue that. And I'm just, if you want me to finish the last point, Fred, we
ahead.
can.
Go ahead, Tess.
All right, so there are quite a few SCAG and RENA events coming up, and this one on the agenda, Southern California Association of Governments, once again, the acronym is SCAG. Again, another meeting on RENA reform, Monday, August 1st at 9:30 a.m. and then a second one Monday, August 15th at 9:30 a.m. So this is going to be a continuance of the discussion that started last week. Discussions about methodology, how all of this is going to be applied. And that's it for me for now.
Okay, thank you. And Bob, you have your hand up.
I lowered it, I thought.
Oh, you lowered it. Okay. Well, there you go. All right. Well, that brings our meeting to a conclusion. It is 8:43, which is pretty early considering where we have been before.
You get longer, Fred.
Jonathan Gregory has, yeah, let's go longer. Jonathan Gregory has a quick comment. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Yeah, before you break, there's a question as to whether your committee is going to meet in August. And for Ren, can we follow up on the clock in September? Thanks.
The agenda stated there is no meeting in August and we meet in mid-September. I think it's
That's correct.
Yes.
Well,
Go ahead, Ron.
hip hip hooray for Brandon.
I'm sorry to do this late out, but
Uh-oh.
is there a limit on the number of council members that can be in the committee?
I thought it was 3. So
What
3
was
or 4.
what was the question, Ron?
Is there a limit of council board members that can be on a committee? I
Yes,
thought it
there
was 3
is.
or 4.
Quorum, but I think we're good because Jonathan Gregory, while he was elected last month. He is not an official committee member of this committee.
No, Jonathan is attending as an attendee.
Yeah, he,
I understand. I was hoping that he could take the, you know, the soon to be vacancy.
Oh, right. So you wanted to see if it's okay for him to do that.
But apparently
without-
it's not, because we've hit the limit already.
quorum of quorum.
I
Unless,
never thought about that. Is it, what's the bylaws say?
yeah, it's a quorum of quorum. So if we have 15 board members, a quorum would be
Eight,
help
right?
me, yeah, help me with the math, 8.
Eight.
And so a quorum of quorum would be 5. I actually think Jonathan could join the Plum Committee if he chose, if my math is correct. So you'll put your petition to Jonathan directly, Ron.
Do you hear me, Jonathan?
Yes, thank you very much. What I appreciate about the neighborhood council is that almost every board member on it has focused or specialized themselves in different things. I see this committee as requiring some expertise, as some others don't necessarily. My focus is really on that public safety and what's going on in the streets. And that's where I think I'm perfectly willing to do whatever the neighborhood council requires. But I really would like to keep my focus there. I've been doing a lot of work. And if I, how do you say, if I disperse my attention so much, I just see your work as so specialized. I mean, it just seems like you have to have enormous knowledge like Brandon did of planning and so forth. So I'm not sure I'm actually outfitted for it, but we could talk about it in September. I mean, I'm open to meet any expectation, but I don't know if I'm the best choice. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Jonathan. We don't want to spread you too thin either.
Thank you.
I disagree with Jonathan.
I feel like butter.
No, I don't agree with you, Jonathan. You're more than qualified.
Oh,
Of
thank you.
course he is, but his time has got a lot of things going on, Jonathan, it sounds like. So, okay, on that note, let's just give a round of applause to Brandon if we can one more time. And thank you, Brandon, for the 2 years that you have given to the community. We thank you, and we hope to see you again, definitely as an attendee, but hopefully more than that. And again, also hopefully in person, that we can see you besides on a screen. So thanks again.
Well,
If
thank you.
anyone else has anything else to say, go ahead. Otherwise, we will close the meeting.
Thank you. See you around.
Thank you. Good night.
All right,
Okay, we're done at 8:47. See you in September.
okay.
Bye.
Good night.